Hi, I'm Phil Dispenza, and this is Collecting, Investing, or Somewhere in Between. This is our video games series, episode 6, and we are covering the Nintendo Entertainment System today. Probably one of the most popular systems ever to be released, and pretty much everybody's familiar with. I'm going to do this video slightly different. I'm not going to show any loose games, and I'm going to limit my suggestions for investing because right now you see many Nintendo games being graded and put on the market, and some will fetch several $100s, while others get thousands and thousands of dollars. So it'd be easy to follow what's selling, what's not, or maybe what hasn't been graded or something. But I'll give you a few, suggestions of things. The Nintendo was released in October of 1985. The thing was, it was amidst the video game crash, which happened more in '84, and most retailers didn't want anything to do with console games at the time. There was a shift towards home computers, and like I said in a previous video, that's where my personal leaning went to. I got a Commodore 64 in '85, so I went to the computer also, and I never looked back. As I've mentioned in other videos, Nintendo is not one of my primary, actually not even secondary collecting goal. At first, I actually thought it was too new because it was only about 10, 11 years old when I started collecting vintage video games. And to me, that wasn't really vintage. You think 10 years isn't really too much vintage, but now it's 35 years later. And, there's been a big surge towards vintage video games. And I'm talking about everything. I was watching a video last night, some TV show rather, where the guys find an Odyssey from 1972, which I think I've explained before. And they, the prices, this is a two-year-old TV show, and price is like astronomical. And I keep thinking it's not feasible, but nowadays you look at stuff online and it's getting crazy. So what I'm going to do is I'll give a brief history of the Nintendo, and then I'll move on. I have a decent amount of box games and sealed games. I'm going to show a couple of suggestions of rarity, and not too many. Then I'm going to go with my personal favorite games. I got more into the Nintendo, I think it was probably about 1988, 89, somewhere in there, to play. It was like my friend had it, and we'd go to the local video store, and they rented video games. And, we started playing games. Whatever he didn't own, we'd rent. And then, you get it for a day or two or something for whatever, $3 fee back then. So you didn't have to spend $30, $40, $50 for a cartridge. And then find out you didn't like the game. I mean, you spend a couple of bucks and you play it and you don't like it, you just return it and get a new one. Anyway, so the Nintendo started out, it's called Famicom in Japan, stood for Family Computer, even though it's technically not a computer, but when it came over to the US, it was called Nintendo Entertainment System. It saw a limited release in New York City, like I said, in October of 1985. And it was boxed more like a toy rather than a video game system. That's how they actually convinced people, the retailers, to actually start purchasing it. It loaded, everybody knows how a Nintendo, if you play anything with Nintendo, it loaded originally from the front before they switched to a top loading system. But the original system loaded from the front, and it looks similar to like, a VCR. And, the original game system came with Rob the Robot and a light gun. And the two pack-in games were Gyromite, which had an interface with Rob the Robot, and Duck Hunt. There were 17 initial released games for the Nintendo. And maybe to your surprise, Super Mario Brothers was not one of them. He actually came later. I was reading online that the game had been released at this time in Japan, but wasn't ready. I guess they didn't have it programmed perfectly or whatever for the US. So 17 original games, and Super Mario wasn't one of them. It's the trademark of Nintendo. Everybody knows Super Mario. There was a total of 677 licensed U.S. games released. I don't know if that includes. I don't believe, because some of these things were unlicensed, of course, like the adult games and things. So there's actually more games than that. And if you go with, like, we talk about the variations, Tengen with their licensed and then unlicensed games. We'll have some variations if you consider licensed versus unlicensed separate games. Then that'll be up to you. I was going to show one cartridge because pretty much all I'm going to do is box games. But one loose cartridge, just to everybody knows the famous Nintendo black sleeve cartridge slides in. This was one of the 17. A 10-yard fight, and I hope it was 117. And gray, it's loaded. It's pretty bulky compared to other cartridges. Not as thick, or maybe it is as thick as other ones. But this was your standard Nintendo cartridge. They were gray. Always had the label. You'll see lots of variations with the Nintendos, and that's where I've talked about investing wise. Pretty much anything early, anything sealed, as always. And I've mentioned this in other system videos that people bought the games and they opened them and they played them. So finding a sealed early release, once they start creating different variations, but finding that first one, if you look at Super Mario Brothers, there's, I believe, 11 different box and cartridge variations, or maybe it's just box variations. The cartridges even have more. There's been no first release found sealed. And the second one everybody saw went for over $100,000, which I think is personally crazy, but try to find one. That's the thing. It was bought, it was open, and it came out with limited release. So if you only have 10,000, 20,000 games, pretty much they bought up, because you think of the lifetime of the system, they're selling millions and millions of systems. So chances are, very little survivability of sealed early ones. So finding a box original is common. So I have Golf. It's the only box original I have of the 17. It might be some specific variation. I never pursued Nintendo variations. I personally own 510, 515 cartridges. There might be a couple of duplicate variations in there, not too many. I wouldn't think more than 3 to 5. So I know I have over 500 different games. Majority of them were loose. And as I said, Nintendo was an afterthought. Somewhere along the line, I believe maybe 1998, 1999, I had already collected maybe at least 3-4 years. And I probably found one. And there was a store called Funkoland at the time. If people grew up and you lived in the 1990s, you'll know what Funkoland was. I believe it was bought by Electronic Boutique, and I don't even know if EBX, if it's still there or something. But Funkoland marketed Nintendo games. They had other stuff, Genesis or whatever. They didn't actually have older systems. So Nintendo was their primary thing, and they'd come out with a list. And I remember at one point the Super Mario Duck Hunt track and field, not track and field, yeah, track and field, the combo they were offered, I believe, for 9 cents a cartridge. And that's when I started just buying stuff. Again, I'd go through their list, and even if I owned the game, I wouldn't even bother caring if it was like 50 cents or less. And there were games for 49 cents. And if they had them in stock, I just bought them. Because, again, when do you buy something? When it's cheap. So, I eventually started buying a lot on the auction site. There was one dealer, I can't remember who he was, but I remember buying a ton of Nintendo games, and he would start everything at 99 cents. And I don't think I'd pay more than $2. Like I said, I had that price guide give me an idea of rarity. But again, I didn't grow up with Nintendo. So I was acquiring a lot of my games for under $2 a cartridge. And again, they're loose. I didn't care because Nintendo wasn't my love. Okay. So there were a couple of things I wanted to cover I'm looking at my little note card here before I start showing, box games. And the one thing was Nintendo was very controlling with the video game market. Because remember, Sega Master System soon came out after this. And it saw a very limited release of cartridges because Nintendo put some type of leverage, most likely saying to third parties, if you make games for their system, you can't make games for ours. I don't know if that's true or not, but that's the most logical one. But I was also told by my Nintendo expert that Nintendo only allowed third-party games to come out with 5 new games per year. So Konami, and people are familiar with Konami as a third-party video game developer, tried to go around that, or did go around it. They created a new subsidiary company under them called Ultra Games. So instead of making 5 games, they can make 10. And, maybe eventually, I don't even know, Nintendo didn't care about 5 releases per year. Or maybe they did. I mean, they're not, there's so many games, but I don't know, there's a lot of, there's those words again, a lot of third-party companies out there. Because I sort my database on, I use Microsoft Access, and I make a database, and I sort it by third-party companies, and there's I don't know, 20-something, 30-something third-party companies for Nintendo. So there's a decent amount of games out there, and so what else did I want to talk about beforehand? Tengen, Tengen. People are familiar with Tengen, Tetris, PacMan, and I'll show you some things here. Originally started with licensed games, and I guess had issues with whatever Nintendo was doing, so they started releasing unlicensed. So that's one of the ones where I actually personally will collect, a gray licensed version and then the black Tengen unlicensed version. I'll have to open up a couple of the cartridges I have to see which version's inside. But that was one of them. What else did I have here? Adult games. That's probably not on the released licensed games. But I actually personally owned 0 adult games for Nintendo. Unlike the Atari 2600, I don't know if I just never saw them. I never really pursued them. I couldn't find things in a while for the most part with Nintendo. I didn't buy it unless it was from that guy on the auction site where it was cheap. So, the Panesian comes to mind as one of the adult games. And they'll sell, even loose, I think, probably like $40-$50. I don't know anything about boxed. I didn't do research on it. But again, you do your own homework. Are they valuable? Probably. To get graded, they're probably worth it. Let's see what else. In 1990, Nintendo came out with their World Championship, and that cartridge is ultra rare. They actually have a gold version. There's a gray version and there's a gold version. The gold version is even rarer than the other ones. So that's like your holy grail. And what was the other one? I can't even read. Anyway, so I'm going to stop it here because I need to look at something. Okay, back. Quick break. Drank a little water. One of the rarest games probably out there is Stadium Events. Most people know that. Loose, they'll sell, I don't know, $15,000 to $25,000 or something like that, I think. It's crazy. There's not too many out there because they changed the title to World Class Track Meet. So if you ever found a Stadium Events or ever purchased one, even my Nintendo contact who helped me along with this, paid a pretty penny for his copy. He wound up selling everything. He'd sold this entire collection. I haven't done that yet. I haven't chosen to. I don't know if I want to. Even Nintendo. And I'm thinking about starting to fill in more of the Nintendo cartridges, even if they're loose. Because I'm a completist, more of a library rather than everything has to be sealed or everything has to be boxed or something. I mean, it's nice if you can find that stuff, but I'm not going to go out of my way to spend high dollars for something that, it's not my love. So anyway, some of the rarest games, I'm just going to give you a few. They're usually the late releases, 1992, if there's any after that, but that's where your rarity is going to be. Because probably, the system's dying out. They already have Super Nintendo. I don't know when the Nintendo 64 came out, but it was probably soon right after that. So are they going to keep making games for the original system? No. So those games are some of the rarest. I'm just going to name four. Little Samson, Power Blade 2. I actually have a Power Blade 1. I don't know if it's just boxed or if it's actually sealed. Panic Restaurant. And what's the last one? Oh, Flintstones. Surprise at Dinosaur Park. There's actually several Flintstones games that were released, but this was the rarest. And again, the later the release, usually the better the game for value. Same as other systems I've discussed in the past. So anyway, let's move on to the box games. You know what? I'm going to start with, I wasn't going to start with this, but I might as well. I had this connection. I'm not too sure exactly where he found them, but there was a company called Wisdomtree, came out with several games that were religious, dedicated to the Bible and stuff. And I remember paying $5 each for these. I have 4 sealed ones. I think I might actually be missing 1 or 2 games completely. If I own the other ones, I think there were 8 total. I have them loose. But just to give you an idea, like I said, these are all sealed. This is Exodus, and you're Moses, and you got to part the sea and things. And I don't know if these are that, playable. But again, my shrink wrap here is a little torn. But finding these, and they were sold a lot through Christian bookstores and stuff. And maybe that's where he got them from, because I remember when he said it, these were the only ones they had available. And that's why I would have bought all of them. This one's called Joshua. I'm going to try to tilt it because there's light coming in from outside. And it says, they have the little sticker. Wrong side. The sticker here, it says family approved. Let's see if I can zoom that in. So, even though you might, do something that is a slightly violent, but, for the most part, Sunday Fun Day. This guy looks a little more like a Frankenstein with his green shirt. He just, I guess everybody's smiling, so it must be fun. And, it says hop on a skateboard and get to church. So you got to throw in some kind of fun with some religious. What do you call that? Background thing with it. I'm looking to see. This one's called Spiritual Warfare. And, I talk to the guys at work. A lot of them are familiar with these religious games. I remember there's Bible Buffet, always comes to mind. I can't remember the other ones. I think there's another one. Bible Adventures, I think, was another one. So those are some of your religious games. Should I get them graded? I'm thinking about actually grading a lot of my sealed Nintendo cartridges. Like I said, I have no real attachment. And so if I can get some big money for something, I might just part with it and buy a loose copy or something, or even an open copy. Like I mentioned, those original, try to find a Super Mario Brothers boxed. You'll find tons of them, and it won't be expensive. Maybe some of the variations that are rarer than others might be, but you can get a box copy, the most common one, and probably pay, $5 to $10 for it open. Why? Because, everybody opened them. But, there's a decent amount of box stuff. It's like Combat or something from Atari. You can find, there's 16 different box variations or 15 different ones. But, you'll find them all day. Because people, who saved boxes open, you'll find them in various condition too. But, all right, so I'm going to start right in alphabetical order. I either pulled these games because they were sealed, or maybe some of my favorite games, or I think it's cool. There's such a variety for Nintendo. A lot of sports games they had, John Elway quarterback or Madden or RBI baseballs, and there was 1, 2, 3 even versions of stuff. But I don't think I pulled any sports games, or I might have pulled a couple. But sports games, again, dime a dozen. You see that all the time. A lot of the Maddens, every year there was a Madden. So there's no real value to a lot of basketball games and stuff. The wrestling might hold some. Then you have your comic book, cartoon characters. You'll see, like I said, the Flintstones or Turtles, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, I think had 4 games. The Simpsons, I think, had 3 or 4 games. So, again, what is in your face at the time? This is the 80s, late 80s, 90s, and that's the stuff that was hot. And, that's what they're going to market. So you're going to have a lot of arcade classics. Again, some of them I have here. And, a genre. My favorite, of course, is fantasy. Role-playing games, things like that. And that's what I'm going to spotlight, and then, we'll see what other things come up. But there's such a big mix of playability that you can have fun and you just stick with the Nintendo if you want and play for the rest of your life. There's that many different types of games out there. I don't think you'll get bored because Nintendo, the graphics improved so much, and the playability, you had the ability to save games on some of them because they had batteries put in. I don't know how well it would work after 30 years, 35 years. If the batteries even survive, but some of them might actually. And also you had a lot of codes. The Nintendo Power Magazine, I believe, they would have codes where you can, cheats. And speaking of cheats, I never used this, but here's the Game Genie, which you plug your cartridge in the top of the Game Genie, and then you plug it into your system, and it enhanced it. So I don't know if they give you extra lives, or unlimited lives, or extra firepower. You have access to certain weapons, whatever it was. But, the Camerica came out with the Game Genie, and it was a way of getting around. Because sometimes it's frustrating, especially early on. If you couldn't save a game, or you didn't have the codes to leave off where you were, something would happen. Somebody kick your power cord out, or power went out or something, as far as you got, you had to start from the beginning again. And it's just frustrating. Nowadays people take advantage. Everything can be saved, and you can just continue from where you were. Or if you die, you can go back to a previous save. And that's what was so great about the computers. You had a lot more power. A lot of times you can save your game. So I already showed you the golf. I showed you the game Genie. So let's just get right to. I'll pull my chair closer. It has my stack in order. And a lot of these, I guarantee you, I didn't pay more than $5 for any of these sealed games, because I just wouldn't have. If I saw a sealed game for $20, I probably wouldn't even know that it was worth. Maybe it was worth $100, but I just wouldn't pull the trigger because, like I said, it's not my love. So I got Air Fortress, brand new sealed. This was made by HAL. There we go, HAL America. I'm a little tired this morning. Bad News Baseball. I don't think this has anything to do with Bad News Bears. But here's one of the sports games I have sealed, made by Tecmo. I think Tecmo was famous for coming out with sports games. I'm going to keep going. I got Captain Comic, brand new sealed. And boxed, and this is the other thing, is I don't have that many boxed Nintendo games. I believe maybe 85 to 90 box total. For a library that's probably close to 700. That's actually not too much compared to my Atari, where I have like 400 box games. Cybernoid, the fight machine, it says. And again, you might be familiar with these games, made by Acclaim, another popular third-party system. Third-party programmer. Deja Vu, Kemco Sika, if I said that right. And I'm not too sure exactly what you do here, but it looks like you have cards. It reminds me of like Clue or something. I had to throw this in here. My favorite video game of all time, which I've said in many other videos. It's not sealed. This is Dragon's Lair. Now, the thing about this Dragon's Lair is this does not do or look anything like the original. And I remember playing on the Commodore. I had Dragon's Lair. This is by ImageSoft. And I remember, just for the art, you had Don Bluth. You always loved that art. That the game itself was more action arcade type versus just to move in the game, because I don't know if I ever talked about this, but I'm going to throw it in there since I just did it. I was 13 years old. Like I mentioned in other videos, I lived in the arcade. And when Dragon's Lair came out, I remember my brother and I, we blew like $5 because it was 50 cents. First of all, it was 50 cents to play a game, not a quarter. And we blew through $5 literally inside of like 10 minutes because you didn't know what you were doing. And with Dragon's Lair in the arcade, you had to be very precise with your movements. And so, your guy's walking, it's more like a cartoon sequence, and you have to react. So he walks up and you have to move right at a specific moment. If you do it too early, you die. If you do it too late, you die. And just, the whole visual experience was so great. And so I went to the arcade, and slowly you become better. You learn the patterns. And what happened was the local arcade by me would have competitions between the top two players of each arcade machine. So what they would do is they would take your highest score, and then, I don't want to move that camera. They would take your highest score and then take the top two people with the highest scores and then compete them for, I think you got maybe, 5 minutes or 10 minutes. I think it was 5 minutes. Challenge. Score as many points as you can in 5 minutes, and then that's it. So what happened was Dragon's Eye was an exception. Why? Because it actually had an ending. And I was playing, and it was going by score. But then you finish it, how many lives did you have left? So it starts, the highest person has only one life left. You die during the game. Eventually, actually, I had the highest score and I had all my lives left. I didn't die. So they would keep it in a notebook, very basic back then. And, I turned around and one day they said, okay, we want you to come on TV and compete against the second best guy out there. And my father, 3 weeks prior, was complaining that I was spending too much time and money, wasting too much time, not spending, wasting too much time and money in the arcade. And so I come home when I found out I'm going to be on TV, and I told him, oh, yeah, Dad, I'm going to be on TV. So during the day of the show, he shows up. And while I'm playing, they interview my father, and they ask him, what do you think about your son coming to the arcade and spending money and stuff? And his actual words were, I encourage him. And I almost died. And this is during the competition. So I played the competition. I died once. I finished the game. My competitor, he died twice, and he finished the game. I'm a 13-year-old kid. I sound goofy on the tape and stuff. And it's almost a little embarrassing. But somewhere along the line, I think my parents still have that recording. We recorded it off the TV with their VCR back then. So I won. I was like happy. They give you a free jacket. Of course, advertising their, arcade restaurant, the Big Mouth Hoagie and Pizza. I wish that was one of my childhood favorites, and people who grew up with me know what that is. And I actually have a couple of the tokens I found still. Anyway, maybe I'll show it at the end of this video just for kicks. Anyway, so back. Sorry, I got off track, but I had to tell that story. Somewhere along the line, one of these videos, I had to tell that story. So might as well be now. All right, one of the favorites of people and most popular through multiple systems, I believe, was Dragon Warrior. I think there were 4 of them for Nintendo. This is boxed. It's not sealed. As I mentioned, television, movies also. Again, you got these cross collectibles. So even though it lasted only, I believe, 3 seasons, Gilligan's Island, I used to watch as a kid all the time in syndication. Why? Because I wasn't born when this came out in the 60s. But you get the Skipper and Gilligan, of course, Bob Denver and Alan Hale Jr. sitting there. And this is, actually, I think I'm missing the manual to this, but I figured I'd show it. Okay. Golgo 13, Vic Takai third-party software. I actually have this sealed. And this looks like, you're a spy or something. It says, only you can help him save the world. Top secret. So that's cool. Back to movies. Again, I pulled this out because it's very recognizable. Several movies. But, a lot of release with this. Jaws. This is, I think, the first time Jaws was in a video game. You had that old, I wouldn't even call it a board game. It was more like an action game where you had the physical Jaws plastic creature, and you had like a fishing pole, and he'd have all the garbage in his mouth. You have to hook it, and before his jaws snap shut, you try to pull out the stuff. Another one just brought back, probably would sell high if this was sealed, with Cobra Kai, is the Karate Kid. And I remember this because I think at one point you have to try to catch flies with chopsticks in the game. But, there's Danielson trying to break things and do his little karate moves fighting people. I don't know why I pulled this. Oh, it's sealed, that's why. Taxon, another third-party software called Mappy Land. And this, the name itself makes it sound like it's a kiddie thing. And it's cool. It's got little mice, and they got a cat on top of the train there. Let's see that. Another one of my probably favorite games, especially on a computer of all time, is Mule. And this was cool because of the fact that this was like a stock market game, except you're on a planet, and you have to work with your opponents. Even though you're competing, you actually have to work with your opponents. And for your colony to survive, you get a plot of land every month. You pick, and then you could sometimes purchase them, extra ones afterwards. They actually made a board game of this a couple years ago, and I picked it up. But you see the third picture there. That's the stock market section. You go up, you walk up to buy something, you walk down to sell it. And sometimes, if you don't have 4 players, it's a 4-player game. If you don't have 4 players, the computer actually takes over the other players. So Mule was like great. We had such a great time. My brother and my 2 friends and I, the 4 of us, would constantly play. It's Electronic Arts, another popular third-party software company. All right, so stack 1's done. Stack 2, and I'm showing 2 cool ones. Miss PacMan, Tenjin. And this is why I'm going to open it up, because I want to see if this is the gray. Nope, this is that's what I thought with the gold box. It has the black cartridge inside. There's my paperwork. It's a little bent. This was the Tenjin box, which is actually pretty cool. Seal of quality. And then this is the Tenjin cartridge over there. And then the back. So this is Miss PacMan. I'll actually put her back later. Put it on the side. And then, of course, I have PacMan. And he's drawn almost like the cartoon. If you remember, if you grew up in the 80s, there was a PacMan cartoon. And this one looks like it. And it says, for play on the Nintendo Entertainment System. These are not licensed. The licensed one, again, would be that gray cartridge. So Tenjin, I guess, didn't like whatever Nintendo was doing and just went out and, I guess, took their chances. I think it had something to do with, they actually got away with releasing stuff unlicensed, because I believe some of the technology might have been different or something. Because Nintendo wasn't one to just give away stuff. It's all about money. Comic books. I have this sealed. Shrink wrap's a little torn. Punisher. And I know there's a Spider-Man game and stuff out there. So Punisher's cool. You'll recognize this one. It's not Mike Tyson's Punch-Out, but it's a regular Punch-Out. I guess somewhere along the line. I don't know if this was... No, this is classic. See, now this might be super rare. And the reason why I say that is because it's copyright 1992, which is like the last year of release, or somewhere around the last year. So maybe it's the classic series, but my guess is quantity out there is probably limited. Now, the thing is, if it's late, even though they produced less, there might be more out there, because most people would have had a Punch-Out. Mike Tyson's Punch-Out, of course, is the best. That would be several $1,000s, lots of $1,000s. More back to movies, comic books, Rocketeer. And, you're familiar with the movie. This probably came out right at the time of the movie. It's a Disney. Bandai and another third-party company. So as you see, every time I show you a game, it's a different third party. The funny thing is, I'm looking at the original price tags on it. It says $44.95, then dropped to $34.95. So this was a $45 game. And again, if you buy this and you don't like it, now you're stuck because you spent $45, and that was great about the video game store. I just pulled this out. It's Ultra, which is the other Konami subsidiary game company, Star Trek. And the reason why, of course, is because Star Trek is popular. And this was released in 91. And 25th anniversary. It looks like there's different games, though. Like, I've shown you Star Trek for the Atari. I've shown you Star Trek for the ColecoVision. But if you look here, there's, you see, it looks like Kirk and Spock and stuff are standing in the second picture and stuff. You have one of the Vulcans talking at the top of the picture. So, Star Trek, I'll get to the other one later. Star Tropics 2, Zoda's Revenge. I have this brand new sealed. Oh, see, this is copyright 1994, so I was wrong with 92. Brand new sealed, this might be worth money. Again. Or this is dated 94 because it is revision A. If you look in the bottom corner, there's revision A. And who knows, I personally don't have access to all the variations that Nintendo has. Some of the grading company guys, when I went to his house, he's got all these variations pretty much. A majority of them sealed. So they know, or else they couldn't grade these things. But that information is sort of privileged, so until I can have access, I probably would never even pursue doing a Nintendo variation list. Super Pitfall, Activision. I had to pull this out. Why? Because Pitfall is classic. I've mentioned Pitfall many times, but this is Super Pitfall. So, again, it says Revision A. I don't know if that's the first or the second or something. The next two, I had to pull them out. Why not? Tetris, boxed. I don't have it sealed, but boxed. This is one of the most common games, and it still sells. So here's your Tetris cartridge. It's your normal gray cart, not the Tengen. I actually do not have the Tengen version, the unlicensed version of that. And then this is not sealed. It is still shrink wrapped. They tore the top, split the top, just nice. This is dated 1993. Tetris 2. And, the box is nice. A couple more. I have to do this for the buddies at my job. We have a long-standing joke because Willow, at one point I purchased 500 mini Willow not action figures, like the little steel figures. It was a Kellogg's mail away. I had 500 of them, and I gave my friend Mark half. And I still have some Willows. So Willow movie, Warwick Davis, Val Kilmer, it's classic. And finally, I pulled this out because, again, my fantasy role-playing game obsession, and it even says fantasy role-playing simulation by Nextsoft, another third-party game, is Wizardry. And if you're familiar with Wizardry, I don't know if there were 7 or 8 Wizardry games released total. I actually didn't play these early on. I believe this is the only one Nintendo released. But I played the later ones. I hear noises. Weird. Anyway, I played later ones, and then I actually bought like a whole collection of it compiled into one. I think it was called Wizardry Gold. It had all the releases, so fantasy role-playing games always on my list. So I got my personal list. I'm going to look at my card here of favorites. And, some you might want to consider. Again, grading, I'd look, because right now there's a lot of stuff out there that's graded for Nintendo. So you can probably look at sold. Don't look at what people are asking. Anybody can ask. I can ask $1 million. That doesn't mean it's worth $1 million. But see what the sold prices are, and make your judgment. If you can pick up anything, and I always say this, probably $25 to $50 for sealed. Yeah, I mean, now it's $45 to get a sealed, graded video game. Is it worth it? If you can get $300, it might be, or more. But you have to make that decision. If you put your money into a CD, you might get 2-3% a year. And if you can quadruple your money inside of a year, that's 400%. The profit is so high that it might be worth doing. And again, you're going to take your risks. the more stuff that's graded, the lower the prices are going to be. As long as they're being sold, it doesn't matter if it's been graded. If it's being sold, like I mentioned that Spider-Man from Atari. Somewhere along the line, it'll probably stabilize if people start getting into the variations. That might create some market because you might have, like I said, the Super Mario Brothers has 11 boxes. The early box is going to be the valuable one. Later box, fifth box might be worth more than eighth box, or ninth box might be worth more than sixth box. Again, sealed, because loose you could find, or open you could find tons. So here's a few of my favorite games or types of games. Pretty much any Dungeons and Dragons. There's several ones released. Pool of Radiance, Hills Far come to mind. In fact, I was playing them on the computer because a lot of stuff, again, do you want to play it on a computer? Do you want to play it on a console? You have so many options, and it's tough because you're only so many. You're one person. How long does it take to play a game? I play a game sometimes. I'm spending a week, 2 hours a day, 3 hours a day, and when you have hundreds and thousands and tens of thousands of games to play, you can do it. You won't have time to do everything. So, find your favorites. There's some mine. Bomberman. And the reason why I threw that out there, it's not as good as the other one. I think it was Super Nintendo. I'm not too sure. We used to go to my friend Scott's house, and we'd have Bomberman Festival. And we would have, I don't know if it was, we can play 6 players at a time or 8 players at a time. But we would go crazy with that, and just like, it was so fun. We'd almost do it on a weekly basis, but say at least 1 to 2 times a month for probably quite some time. What do I have here? Can't read. Oh, Castlevania, most popular or very popular series. 3 releases for Nintendo. Castlevania series was great. The Dragon Warrior, I showed you one, another popular series. Donkey Kong. There's several games for Donkey Kong. I didn't show it. Donkey Kong Junior Math is one of the rare early 17 games. I have it loose. Even loose, I think it's $75 to $100 right now. Finding that box or sealed, forget it. You're talking money. I threw it out of order because I was going in alphabetical order, and they had it listed on the Empire Strikes Back. But I don't even remember the other Star Wars game, but I do remember playing the Empire Strikes Back with my friend, probably rented from that video store back in the day. One I do remember is right underneath it was Friday the 13th. We actually killed Jason. I didn't think it was possible. Well, then, of course, your game just starts over, and I think it becomes even harder. Because eventually you could figure out, a lot of times these the characters in the game or whatever, it's like Punch-Out, they have patterns. You follow the pattern, eventually learn their pattern, and then you could defeat them. So we beat Jason. We rented that game. We had it, I believe, for 3 days. And once we decided, we beat Jason, then your game just keeps going and starts over, and he gets harder. We're like, okay, let's move on. So, but I love that game. It was so cool. You go to the different cabins, and eventually you have to fight Jason. So, Friday the 13th, and like I said, it wasn't never released for the Atari. This is probably, I believe, this is the first release of a Friday the 13th game. Gauntlet, back to the arcade. Gauntlet was released, and it was probably one of the first games I remember playing multiplayer. We have 4 of our friends. I remember dropping a ton of money. You throw $10 in quarters in for your lives, and you go around, and one person's the elf and one's the wizard or the fighter or whatever, and it'll say, elf shot the food. It's like you're supposed to eat the food, you accidentally shoot it, and the monsters just keep coming. They just regenerating like crazy. So Gauntlet's on my list. Indiana Jones Temple of Doom is another one I believe we probably rented. I love that game. You're in the little mine carts, and you're trying to go through the mine and stuff. But I remember playing that. What do I have here? Oh, Legend of Zelda, of course. Everybody with Zelda, and very popular character. Nintendo, when they came out with their comic books, Zelda got a comic book besides Mario. And of course, throughout the years, every system they come out with, there's more Zelda games. The Mega Man, 6 Mega Man series were released as 6 Mega Man games. I'm actually missing number five. I don't know why. It's something that's eluded me. I just don't want to pay money for it now. It's even worse, probably. These people get greedy, like I've said in the past. Paperboy. And this is one that was actually cool in the arcade because you had handlebars, and you had I think the trigger was on the front of the handlebar, almost like a brake, unless maybe it was a button on the front, if I'm just like thinking wrong. But you have your route that you have to deliver your papers, and some people, if you're accurate, you can throw it inside the mailbox, you get bonus. You throw it on their front lawn, not on the front lawn, the step or front door, you get bonus. But then you could throw it through their window, which I thought was so cool. And you'd have obstacles. You're riding your bike and you have all these obstacles that you have to avoid too at the same time. And, at the end of your run, it'll say how accurate you were, or, what percentage of your customers did you deliver correctly to, and things, how many windows you broke and stuff. So Paperboy was one of I loved it. I put on this list Pinbot. Now, usually pinball machines do not, live up to a real pinball machine on a console, on a cartridge. But I put Pinbot on there anyway. When I went to NJIT, they had a Pinbot pinball machine. Of course, it cost $0.25. And, you earn your free games. You get the high score. Every time you hit a certain score, you might get another free game. If you hit certain targets late, you get extra games. And I remember one quarter I spent 2 hours playing, and I left 11 credits or something in there. It was just one of my favorite games, so that's why I threw it on the list. Popeye, loved it in the arcade, loved it on the Atari, loved it on the ColecoVision, love it on Nintendo. So Popeye was Nintendo release game. And again, you eat your spinach, you beat up Pluto, you catch Olive's little hearts that she's kissing at you. But it's great. Spy versus Spy. I only have a few left. Spy versus Spy, Mad Magazine. Everybody's familiar with it. If you watch Mad TV, Spy versus Spy, you have your white spy, your black spy. I think they're crows and blackbirds. So you've got to set traps and try to blow up or kill or whatever your other versus your spy. And we played this on the Commodore, and I just absolutely loved this game. It's funny because you had a split screen. The thing is, you could sort of cheat if you're looking at it. It would have been better if you had two TVs or two games or something that connected. Eventually, the technology is great and you can do it now, but back then you couldn't. The Super Mario Brothers. That's the one thing I have on here. I only have 2 things left. Super Mario Brothers, 3 games. The third one, I remember we were playing in my house in Pennsylvania. My friend, we brought up the Nintendo. I think we own this. I think I might actually have this sealed somewhere. The copy I have here is it's boxed, but it's not sealed. I think I have one of those released with the system version sealed. Anyway, so Super Mario, of course, super popular, very common game, loose. But even I don't know about the one. Maybe one by itself will sell, even loose, $10, $15. The 2s and the 3s, usually $20 to $30. You can probably get loose. And so if you find those things for, say, even $5, it's probably worth buying. Now, the thing with the Nintendo, and I haven't mentioned this, I've mentioned it in a different video. Sometimes it didn't work. A lot of times the spring would break, and you try to get a whole new system. But the problem is that it was a little spring. So if you knew how to fix the spring, you just buy a replacement spring. It would cost you $5 or something, and you fix your system. Because sometimes if the spring kept coming back up, you just jam another cartridge in there, and to hold it down, and hopefully it worked. You'd blow on it. Nintendo sold that cleaning. I remember the little pink stick or something with the cloth, the cotton pad, and it says you have to use this particular. It says do not use alcohol. You have to use our solution, and the solution was like 60 or 70% alcohol. And so it made no sense. All it was a cotton swab or cotton with alcohol, and you just clean the contacts, which I thought was funny. So anyway, the final game I have on here, Three Stooges, and I remember playing this on the Nintendo. And I remember three boards. I don't remember if there was another one. You had the pies. You had to throw pies at people's faces. You had Curly, and if you're familiar with the Three Stooges, I didn't grow up with them, but I grew up on the syndication. Why? Because they're from the 40s and 50s and stuff, and it's sort of into 60s. But the original three, Shemp was okay. I like Shemp, but Mo, Larry, and Curly. And one of them, there were mini games. So one of them was throwing pies at people. One of them, Curly, you have to, and it's based on the episodes from the TV show. He had to get his little oyster crackers before the clams inside they were still alive. He was eating his soup, and you had to grab the oyster crackers with your spoon. And eventually, when the clams eat all your oyster crackers, you lose. And then Larry with his fiddle, they're playing Pop Goes the Weasel. He's running along the street, and he's dodging things and jumping and stuff. And the entire time you hear the song playing. So it was great. Three Stooges. So those are my picks. I think that's pretty much everything I needed to cover for the Nintendo. I'm letting my buddy, my Nintendo expert, watch this video in advance. So if there's anything after this that he said I should probably add, I might come back to it. So this should be the end, but if it's not, keep watching. And if I find that video game arcade coin, I'll throw up the picture at the end. Anyway, so subscribe, like, make comments. If you have suggestions on things that you recommend, I don't think I ever put that. I make suggestions of things, but write it in the comments, because like I said, this is not my system. I just bought whatever I could find, but I didn't invest in Nintendo at all. So I'll see you next time.